Thank you, Senator. Senator Marshall, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Peters, and welcome to our nominees this morning. My first two questions are yes/no questions. We're limited on time. I hope you can give me a yes or no answer, and if you don't, I'll have to interrupt you if it's a long one. So the first one is, do you believe non-citizens are lawfully allowed to vote in the District of Columbia elections? Do you believe non-citizens are lawfully allowed to vote in District of Columbia elections? We'll just go down the row here. Ms. Beatty Arthur.
I'm not familiar with the case law that supports that, so I would not be able to give you an educated answer with that.
Ms. Boucher?
Yes, likewise, I'm not aware of any law that gives them the authority to vote. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Johnston?
That is not an issue that I have studied, but if it were to come before me as a judge, I would certainly evaluate the relevant precedent to apply it to the facts at hand.
Okay. Mr. McKenzie?
I'm not aware of any law or rule in that regard, so I can't say yes or no.
Okay. Mr. Trong?
Senator, similarly, I'm not aware of the legal issues on that.
Okay. The follow-up question is, do you believe illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote in D.C. elections? Do you believe illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote in D.C. elections? Maybe we'll start this way and go backwards. Mr. Trong?
Thank you, Senator. Again, I'm not aware of the mandates or D.C. law on that issue, so I'm unable to answer that question at this time.
Mr. McKenzie?
My decision on that, if it were to come before me, would be based on the law and controlling precedent. I'm not aware of it as I sit here today.
Ms. Johnston?
I am not familiar with any law on that issue and would need to review that law before making a decision if it were to come before me as a judge.
Ms. Boucher?
As a sitting judge, I'm not in a position, I'm not permitted to speak as to policy. If the law was in place and a case came before me, I would apply the law to the facts before me. Thank you.
Ms. Beatty Arthur?
Similarly, I'm also a sitting judge, and I'm precluded from making any assessments as to the appropriateness of that until it becomes a law.
Okay. My next question for Mr. McKenzie. This last October, a young person testified before the House Judiciary Committee about being the victim of an armed robbery on the streets of D.C. The criminal responsible was sentenced to just 1 year in prison, despite the criminal having robbed 6 victims and 2 businesses. After his release, the criminal went on to rob 2 more persons at gunpoint. I guess this is the bigger picture I'm after here, Mr. McKenzie, is what kind of message does that send to criminals in D.C.? And if confirmed, will you be tough on sentencing for violent repeat offenders?
Senator, I believe as a father of 3, a husband of 1, public safety is a paramount issue. I'm concerned about crime every day living in the city. What I will commit to is, if I'm confirmed to this position, I'll take a look at the facts of the case, look at the law that applies, and I will impose a fair and just sentence as required by D.C. law.
Okay. Ms. Boucher, would you answer that question too? What kind of message does this send to criminals in D.C.? And if confirmed, will you be tough on sentencing for violent repeat offenders?
Crime and public safety are concerns of mine. I was a single mother with young children, so I appreciate the significance of it. I believe the role of the court to address crime and public safety is to adjudicate the criminal cases that are before them, and I would, if confirmed as an associate judge, apply the standard guidelines pursuant to our criminal code.
I want to continue down this path of my personal concern about crime in D.C. I'm concerned when my family is here to walk more than a block or 2 from the Capitol. I'm concerned about my staff walking, the safety of my staff walking to and from the Capitol as well. In 2023, here in D.C., there were 274 homicides, 185 sexual assaults, 959 carjackings, 1,400 assaults with deadly weapons, 6,829 motor vehicle thefts. Just over the last 18 months, members of Congress and their staff have been assaulted, carjacked, robbed, and stabbed. This last October, the Senate Sergeant of Arms sent a bulletin out recommending that Senate staff drive with their windows up to avoid traveling alone in order to prevent getting carjacked in our nation's capital. Again, 7,000 car thefts last year That's quite a few each day. In January 2023, the D.C. Council passed a bill that rewrote D.C. criminal code. It eliminated life sentences and got rid of a mandatory minimum sentencing for every crime other than first-degree murder. Under this rewrite, the maximum penalty for any individual convicted of using a gun to commit an act of violence dropped from 15 to 4 years. I guess the question to all of you, have time, several of you mentioned this. What is your level of concern for crime in the district, and what is your role in here? Maybe we'll start with Mr. Chong and just go down if you got a second.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. As a father of a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter raising a family in Washington, D.C., the crime issue is a forefront issue in my family. However, if confirmed as a judge in D.C., I'm committed to following the sentencing guidelines, the applicable laws, and impose a just consequence when the case is presented to me.
Thank you. Mr. McKenzie, you basically answered the question already, but anything to add?
No, Senator.
Good answer. Ms. Johnston, go ahead.
Resident, mother raising 3 young children here. I think the public safety in this city is one of the most important concerns for the district. And if given the opportunity to serve as a judge on the DC Superior Court, my role would be to swiftly and effectively endeavor to resolve cases as quickly as possible so that the parties involved can have an appropriate resolution.
Ms. Boucher, you answered parts of the question. Anything you would like to add?
I would just like to thank the committee for having our nomination hearing. Our court needs more able bodies to quickly and adjudicate the criminal cases that come before it, and I think that that is the most powerful tool that we will have to address public safety in the District of Columbia.
Ms. Beatty Arthur?
I'm in complete agreement with my colleague, Judge Boucher. That is the best way to assist. And I, shout it from the rooftops. I'm very proud to be a native Washingtonian, but I would be absolutely remiss if I did not address the crime problem.
Thank you. Senator Langford.